Hey everyone, it's Karen with Yes Please PaperCrafts. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some tips on fussy cutting. I was working on this scrapbook layout and I kind of ran out of embellishments. I didn't really have a lot to go with these particular papers that I have, but in the kit that I was working with, they did have some papers that I could use to do some fussy cutting. And so here is the kit that I was using. It's from Little Birdie and it's called Purple Passion, and my friend Tina had picked this up at Tuesday mornings and shared this with me, and so I just think this is so pretty. And I love this picture of my little dog Lilybell, and she's wearing this purple bandana, and I thought this would be the perfect paper to do a scrapbook layout for her. And so the title of my page is Paw Prints on My Heart, and I was having a little bit of trouble finding things that would go with this layout, and so I decided that I was just going to take some of these papers and do some cutting. So I did cut up the journaling cards, and then they have this pre-punched doilies that I kind of punched out, and then there was also this 12 by 12 sheet that was a fussy cut sheet. And the funny thing was, I thought I was going to be using these, and I thought they were stickers. And so I was trying to peel them off the backing and it wasn't coming off. Well, they've got this outline around it that makes it look like it's a sticker, but it's not. It's just a guide for fussy cutting this out. So I went back and looked at this sheet, the instruction or the content sheet of what comes in the kit, and I realized that it's not stickers, it's this fussy cutting sheet. So I did kind of cut these apart already a little bit, and I did cut a few of them out, but they have this line that goes around that's kind of a guide for fussy cutting these out. Okay, so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, you know, what you should do when you're first getting started with fussy cutting. And one thing I think is really important is that you shouldn't try to fussy cut something out that is really important to you as the first thing that you do. I think you should try to practice. It's like anything. The more you do it, the easier it's going to become and the better you're going to get at it. So as you fussy cut and you keep doing it, you're going to get better and better and better. But when you first start off, you might not be able to do things that are very intricate. So start off with some simple shapes, and I would suggest that as my first tip. Okay, so the next thing that's the most important is what scissors you use. So my second tip is to have a good pair of scissors and have the right scissors for fussy cutting. So let me share with you some scissors that I have in my craft room, and I have a lot because I have been crafting for probably 25-30 years. I don't even know, I lost count a long time ago. And so I'm probably showing my age by telling you how long I've been scrapbooking, but okay, so these are scissors that I have in my craft room that I've collected over the years, and I just want to share with you a couple of things about these different scissors. Okay, so the worst scissors in this bunch to use for fussy cutting is these scissors, which are actually utility scissors, and you don't want to use anything that's this large or that has a blade that's that thick. And unless you're doing something really big, like trying to cut something out or cut cardboard out, I wouldn't recommend using these for fussy cutting. So the next scissors you don't want to use for fussy cutting is something like this. These are almost like a child scissors. It has a blunt tip on it, and it also has very thick blades. And so these are not very good scissors either. What you're looking for fussy cutting scissors is something with a very thin blade with a sharp point on the end. Okay, so this one here as well, it does have a sharp tip on the end, but it does have a thicker blade, and so this one I don't think would be good either for fussy cutting. Now, what scissors you do end up picking to do your fussy cutting is going to be a personal preference, because it's going to be what scissors are comfortable for you. Because one of the other things that's really important about picking the right scissors is you want to pick scissors that you feel like you have good control with, that are comfortable for you to use. Okay, so these are another pair of scissors that you might think would be good for fussy cutting, but I found for me they don't work very well, and that is because the blades are too small. You don't have much room to work with the paper. It's just to me, these blades are just really tiny. So unless I was doing something super small where I'm trying to get into a very tight place, I would not use these scissors either. Okay. And then the next ones I have, these are actually pretty good for fussy cutting, but I don't like these from me because they're spring loaded. And when you use them, you have to press up and down like this. And I have had carpal tunnel surgery, I think it's been almost 20 years ago, and I don't have good strength in my hands. Yeah, it was back in 2001. So these don't work for me, but I love that they have this really soft grip, and it does feel good. I mean, it doesn't hurt your fingers to use these scissors, but they're still very hard for me to use for an extended period of time. So I do not use these for fussy cutting. Okay, and then we have these scissors, and this is kind of like in between this one and the little bitty one. It's a good pair of scissors. These are really good. I love these scissors for just doing stuff around my craft room. These are from PaperCrafts. It's a really nice blade, but still the blade is kind of thick on these scissors, and so I don't use these. And also the blade is a little bit too long. So let me share with you my two scissors that I love to use for fussy cutting are these two pairs. Now I believe that this one is Martha Stewart, I think. It doesn't have any kind of a branding on it, so I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that they're Martha Stewart, okay? And so I did have these, and this was my favorite pair of scissors, and then I lost them. So I didn't have them. I think a couple months went by, and I searched everywhere, and I could not find them. So I went ahead and I got another pair of scissors, and these are from We Are Memory Keeper, and they're precision cutting scissors. And now these are my favorite pair. So the difference between these two pairs of scissors is that the handle and the grip on this is hard plastic, where the one on the We Are Memory Keepers, it has kind of a rubber or a silicone lining, so they're much more comfortable to use. And the funny thing is after I bought these a few weeks later, I found these scissors, and I was cleaning and I was moving furniture around, and I have this recliner where I'll sit to watch TV, and that's where I usually do a lot of fussy cutting. And I could swear that I dropped these scissors by that chair, and usually when I drop things by the chair or even into the cushion, it falls through and goes under the chair. So I looked under the chair several times and I never could find them. Well, I finally just decided when I was cleaning, I was going to turn that chair over and clean under it. And then I found out it's a recliner, and inside the recliner at the very back, if things fell a certain way, it just fell into the chair. So I found all kinds of stuff in there. I found these scissors, I found my bone folder, I found my scoring tool that goes to my Stampin' Up! Scoreboard. So I was really happy I found all those things, and now whenever I use my tools in that chair, I'm really, conscious of the fact that that chair could swallow them, and and I would lose them inside the chair. So anyway, but when I bought these scissors, then they became my favorites, and if I can't find these, then I'll use this old one, but usually don't use that one too much anymore. So that's the second thing on second tip on fussy cutting is making sure you have a really good pair of scissors that has a sharp point, a very thin blade, and kind of like this size I think works really well for me. But of course, what works for you may not be the same. You might, feel more comfortable with a different pair of scissors. But if you're just starting out, I would definitely recommend checking out these We Are Memory Keeper scissors. And I'll see if I can find them somewhere on the internet, and I'll put a link to them in the description below. Okay, so the next thing that I want to share with you guys is, let me look at my notes. Whether or not you want to leave a space. Okay, and what I mean by that is sometimes when you're fussy cutting, you might want to cut all the way to the edge and leave no white space. But other times when you're fussy cutting, you might want to leave a white space all the way around. Now, some images are much better if you leave the white space around it. And so I'm going to share with you a couple of different ones and just kind of show you the differences. Now, here's some things that I fussy cut. And when I do that, what I'll do is I'll print out a copy of the paper or the paper pad that it came from. And then I will put them into these CD sleeves that I got from Amazon. and just store them in there. So when I go to work with this collection, I kind of know where these things are that kind of go. So these parasols that I cut out of this Maggie Holmes Sunny Days parasol paper, it worked really well to cut them right up against the edge of those parasols. The same thing with the Sunny Days with these butterflies. It worked really well to cut the butterflies out. And then also with this Willow Lane butterflies. Now for this Sunny Days from Maggie Holmes, this paper right here, I did not cut right along the edge because there's a couple of things in this paper that would make it very difficult to cut right on the edge. One would be how thin these umbrella poles are. That would be really difficult to cut out. Also, some of the images like this bathing suit, I wanted to leave that together, so there's some white space there. And then they have things like the handbag that has a handle, which that would be very difficult to cut out. So if you have things where you're going to have white space in the inside of the image, it's better to leave a white border around the entire image. I think it looks much better. So for instance, we have here these umbrellas that have a little bit of white all the way around the image, and like this little bag. Now you could use an X-Acto knife and cut all that out, but that would be really hard. I don't know if I would do that, but I think it looks cute still, even though you're leaving like a little bit of a border all the way around. I still think that looks cute for some images. Okay, so another one that I left the border around was this Maggie Holmes Sunny Days paper that had all these really pretty seashells. And I felt like it would be very difficult to actually cut out these little gold frond things. And so I did leave the white all the way around this image as well. So these shells, I left a little bit of white. And I still think it looks pretty. And when you buy ephemera packs and die cut packs from the manufacturers, sometimes you do get ones that have a white border, and sometimes you get ones that don't. So whether or not you leave a border or not, I think a lot depends on the images that you're working with, and whether or not it would look good to not leave the white border. Okay, so for these would be very difficult to cut out right up against the image because there's very small stems. That would be very difficult, and the paper would get very thin there, and the paper would get really weak. I don't think that would work too well. There's also some parts of the image that doesn't connect to anything at all, and so for this leaf, it doesn't actually even have anything that connects to it. So in those cases, you would want to leave a border around the entire image. Okay, so tip number 3 is that when you take a fussy cut paper, and I'm going to share with you, I have some more pages down here. I like to take paper like this, and I'll just put it into this plastic sleeve. These are record sleeves, like music albums, and you can get these on Amazon as well. And I'll leave links to all these different plastic sleeves that I'm using. I'll leave links to those in the description of this video as well. Okay, so for this one, I started cutting out these butterflies, and I did decide that I would not leave any white space, and I would cut out the butterflies. And so that's what I started doing. And then as I'm cutting them out, I'm putting them into a sleeve. I think this is a pocket that's like 5 by 7. And then these are like pockets that are 5 by 5. And it depends on, how big the images are, which size pocket that I use. But I wanted to share with you one of the things that I do as I am cutting stuff out is I will cut things down first. So before I even start cutting out any butterflies, I will just take the entire sheet of 12 by 12 paper or whatever it is, and I will just start cutting it down just roughly into smaller pieces. And then sometimes what I'll do, where's my good scissors? See, I don't like to use any other scissors but these. The next thing I'll do is I'll take one of these strips, and then I'll just cut out roughly all of these individual butterflies. And I think it makes it much easier if you just start, you know, cutting it up into smaller pieces. Now, for something like this, I would just probably throw this away because you can't even tell what it is. But if it was more, I might keep it, because a lot of times when you're working with embellishments, you might tuck it under something. And so even something that's not a full butterfly, I might go ahead and keep that if it was big enough, a big enough piece. Okay, so once I have all these pieces cut out like this, that's when I would then start cutting out each individual butterfly, because it's much easier to work with just the individual piece like this than it is to try to cut it out of a much larger piece. Because when you're trying to cut and you have this huge piece of paper waving around and it's weighing down the paper, and it's much harder to control. So it's much easier if you try to limit yourself to just, you know, one piece at a time. Okay, so that's that tip. Okay, so the next tip is how you would use the scissors. And I think that's, I've seen this on other videos before. I've watched a couple of different people over the years share some tips on fussy cutting. And one of the things I've always seen on every single one of those videos is that you should move the paper and not the scissors. Okay, so what you're going to do is, as you go around, you're going to see that I'm going to twist the paper and not the scissors. And it's really important when you're doing that on a curve. You're going to get much better lines if you do. It's kind of hard to talk and do this at the same time. If you move the paper and not the scissors. So you're going to see I'm going to be turning the paper and not the scissors. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to share with you guys is, when you're going to be cutting something very, very small, that's going to be, I'm going to cut around these antennae, you want to skip over that, because if you cut that now, the chances of you bending and breaking or tearing that are going to be much higher than if you just leave it to the end. So what I like to do is, I'm just going to skip over that and just go down the other side. And we're just going to keep going. Okay? Alright, so the next thing would be is, if you feel the paper bending, you want to kind of stop and just take a break. You don't want to keep going if you feel the paper bending, if you feel the paper start to weaken. And I'm going to share with you something that I cut out the other day that I was really struggling with, and I was having a problem with it, is because this particular piece right here that I cut out the other day, it has these really small points right here and right here, and you can kind of see how the paper is bending at those points. And so I couldn't really get it to not do that because the piece was so long, and you can see how it's hanging. So I'm actually thinking that I might cut this into multiple pieces to use it, but it was supposed to be a border strip. It's just that the paper is very weak right here in these really little spots, and as I was cutting around this, it was bending. So if you do notice that the paper is bending, it's good to just stop and try to see if you can figure out a different way to hold the paper, or try not to cut into that area maybe until the very end, like skip around it, and try to just work on those narrower areas at the very end. And then you will have a less of a chance for the paper to bend and start to kind of break down. Okay, so as we're going around the butterfly here, you want to move the paper with your hand. So as you come, you're going to go and just, I'm moving the paper, the scissors are staying where they are. And that's really one of the most important things I think about fussy cutting, is that you want to make sure that you're moving the paper and not the scissors. Because if you're moving the scissors, it's going to be much more jagged and you're not going to get a very smooth cut. Okay, so if you don't feel comfortable once you get into a corner like that, this is my next tip. Instead of continuing into the corner and trying to twist this around, you're going to be kind of pushing against this paper here. So what I do instead is I will pick this up and hold it together. That gives me more support. And then I will come at this from a different angle and come toward the place where I had cut into. Okay, now I have this piece right here that you might need to cut more into this side, and then it'll come off. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to show you when I get around this part here, there's another trick that I use. So let's go ahead and we're going to move the paper around, and when we get here into this corner right here, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to grab hold of all of that paper. It really makes it more stable, and you can really, you know, you don't have to worry so much about it flopping around. So now I'm going to come at it from the bottom of this butterfly body, and I'm going to go up toward where I had cut. And you know, this is working out so much better than it usually does. I usually don't get it to come off like that, so if I can't get it to do what I want it to do in the video, that's going to be bad. Okay, so let's try it again. We're going to go around the butterfly body into that crevice there. Going to grab hold of that paper, and then we're just going to come at it from the other way. Okay, so now say if you get it here and it's still attached, what I like to do is I like to flip it over and pull it up like that, and then you can just snip it off from the back. And then that way you're not putting pressure in this corner and possibly ripping the paper there. Okay, so that is another tip and something that I like to do when I'm trying to get into a tight corner. So we're just going to keep going around here. Alright, so pretty good so far. Now let's go ahead and work on the antenna here. We're just going to turn this around, and I'm going to cut into this antenna on both sides. Okay, then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to be very careful. I want to just grab hold of that middle piece. This is what they mean about fussy cutting. You have to fuss with it. Usually it's a lot easier. I think it's really hard to do things on camera. Or maybe you just notice that it's a lot harder to do it on camera because when I'm not trying to talk to people and I'm concentrating, it's just, yeah, because this is not going so well. Usually this is much easier. So, and maybe it's good if you see me struggle with it, because then you'll know it's, it does take practice. You just have to practice at it, so I'm bending the wrong thing. See, if I was doing this, I'd have it much closer to where I could see it. I'm older. I'm in my late 50s, and so I have trouble with my eyesight as well. I'm just going to cut that off, and then I want to show you. Look how well we got that. I don't know if the camera's picking it up. It looks kind of fuzzy to me, like it's not focusing. Here we go. So you can see how well we did around the antenna there. And so I like to fussy cut. I love the fussy cut. So I just wanted to kind of share some tips with you guys. Now I have a couple more tips. Let me share with you. Okay, so something else I wanted to kind of mention and kind of talk about here was what types of things would you actually fussy cut. And I get a lot of my things from paper pads, but also I use things like project cards and anything really that you could turn into an embellishment. So let me share with you a few things that I kind of pulled from my stash that you could possibly use to fussy cut. So we could fussy cut out this really pretty floral, and I could cut out, this would be kind of hard to cut out. See this little fox? I guess you could cut around it, but I would definitely not try to cut right up against it. I would probably leave a border, and I wouldn't cut out that middle at all. I would just go all the way around the outside of it. So that would be kind of hard. So the smaller the image is, the harder it's going to be. And for this one as well, with this little cloud and the raindrops, I would probably either just cut the cloud out by itself, or maybe cut some of the pink and go all the way around, including the raindrops. And then we have this little robot here, and even though it's chopped off, you could still use this and just, I would cut around with a border as well on that one. And same thing with the car, I would leave a border. Some of these would be really, really hard to cut if you cut right up against the edge. Just look how thin that pole is for the flag. I mean, that would be really hard to cut around. And then for things like this, if you have anything that's a circle, even with all of my years of fussy cutting, I still have trouble going around a circle and making it look right. And so what I tend to do is I have a bunch of punches, like these Stampin' Up! Punches here, and I have like a 3/4, and I have a 1 inch, and I'll just try the different punches. And instead of trying to cut this out, I would just punch it out. So here, I'm going to get a little bit of the pink. And if I use this one, it's a little bit too small. And so I'll probably just go with the bigger punch and punch this out and just leave a little bit of the pink there. And sometimes it's hard to get it exactly in place, but that would still be cute. You could pop it up with a little foam tape and use that as an embellishment. So I think that's really cute. Then a lot of times when you get these Project Life cards, they give you like 4 or 5 copies of the same card. And so this is a good one to use for fussy cutting. You could fussy cut out these little mopeds or motorcycles, I don't know what they're called, and use those on a scrapbook page. So here's just more examples of different ones. If you have something with words, you could actually cut around the entire word. And let's just do that just so you can kind of get an idea of how you would cut something where you're not cutting right up against the edge of it. And so what I do is I just start in one place and I'll just go around. And it's better to kind of like move the paper and kind of make shapes than to just really kind of, you don't want to follow it. You don't need to follow it exactly. You just need to follow kind of along the shape of the letters. And another thing I want to mention is sometimes it's easier to fussy cut something than other times because it also depends on the paper, like how thick the paper is. This paper is pretty thick. Now I got to this point and I feel like my scissors are trapped. And so what you want to do is if you feel like you're in a place where you're, see how my scissors are kind of trapped in there? And if I start moving around, this is going to get in my way. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this off because now I'm free to be able to move my scissors. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep cutting. So you want to make sure that you're always in control. If you feel like you lose control, you should stop and reassess. It's always good to stop and, you know, that way you're not going to mess up your, whatever it is you're trying to cut out. Now, if at some point my lines are not like right here, I didn't do a very good job. You can always try to go back and cut a little more off to kind of even and smooth it out. This paper is a little bit hard. It's kind of thick paper. So the thicker the paper, the harder it's going to be to keep it smooth. But you can trim some off and then make it better. So, you know, sometimes it comes out better than other times. You can always go back and kind of adjust it. And I still think that that's cute. I wouldn't use that on a page or on a card. And if you wanted to, you could cut out individually each one of those words. But that's how you would cut around something like that. And I don't worry too much about how much space is around it. Sometimes I have a little bit more than others, but I still think, you know, I don't want to spend a huge amount of time following along exactly with the shapes in this word. I just want to cut it out and leave a little bit of an edge. And so you can do it pretty quickly. And the more practice you get, the quicker you'll be at it. Okay, and then we have stuff like this. This would be kind of hard for me to cut out because I'm not good at cutting circles, even with all my practice. But this is kind of a wonky circle, so I might be able to cut that one out. But that's really cute, so let's record this. This is probably something I would not fussy cut. I think these images are way too small. And so with this, I probably would not do that. So sometimes there's things that I just wouldn't even try it. I would just use it like it is and not try to cut out those lollipops because I just think that's too small. And then here we have the word love. You could cut that out and see how many they give you. There's like a ton of these little cards. And if you get like the big set of them, there's really a lot of them there. And I've been getting the Project Life cards from Tuesday Mornings. They've been having these huge sets, like the ones that are usually $30, and they've been having those at Tuesday Mornings for like $5 or $6. And so I picked up a couple of those, and that's where I'm getting a lot of these cards. And I like to use these Project Life cards in scrapbook layouts and also in greeting cards, just making cards. And I want to say with something like this, you could actually use a hole punch, or a circle punch, and be able to punch out these different little shapes. And isn't that cute? So yeah, for this I wouldn't try to do it with my fussy cutting. I would use the circle punch. With this one you could cut out these flowers at the bottom. So yeah, there's just tons of I think things you can turn into ephemera for your scrapbook layouts and your cards. And so I like to look at Project Life cards. I also like to look at my paper pads. And then I will also mention a lot of times in these paper pads they will have these sheets like this one here. This particular one here has these squares. It's like I guess these are probably 4x4 cards. And I think some of them would be really cute to use it as a 4x4 card, like maybe this one. But I could see cutting this out right here, like Fussy cutting the flowers out, Fussy cutting the birds out. So just because they have this as a 4x4 square, it doesn't mean you have to use it that way. And if I've learned anything from Nicole Jones and Missy Wooden, it's that you can cut things in half and use part of it, or you can cut things out, you can cut them up. You know, you can cut this out and replace that word love with something else and just make it fit whatever you're trying to do. So just because they have the word happy there doesn't mean you have to use it. And I think it's just awesome if you watch some of these ladies over there. I love Nicole Jones 911, and her channel on YouTube is awesome. And I'll leave links down in my description of the video below. But my favorite channels that I have learned so much from is Nicole Jones 911, Missy Wooden. She does a lot of mixed media, and her pages are so gorgeous. And then Janet over at R2S Scrapbooking. So those three ladies have some awesome content on their channels. And I've learned a lot from watching what they do with their scrapbooking layouts. So I think that's all I have for this video today. I sure hope that I helped you out there with your fussy cutting. And if you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment on this video. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you would like to see more videos, please subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Bye now.